pictures reveal the arrogance with which the German warlords meet the charges of criminal injustice to civilized people. Prosecutor Robert Jackson of the United States opens the trial with a strong indictment of the defendants.
Prosecutor for the United States of America.
The privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated. That four great nations, flushed with victory and stung with injury, stay the hand of vengeance and voluntarily submit their captive enemies to the judgment of the law is one of the most significant tributes that power has ever paid to reason. This tribunal, while it is novel and experimental, is not the product of abstract speculation, nor is it created to vindicate legalistic theories. This inquest represents the practical effort of four of the most mighty of nations, with the support of 15 more, to utilize international law to meet the greatest menace of our times, aggressive war. The common sense of mankind demands that law shall not stop with the punishment of petty crimes by little people. It must also reach men who possess themselves of great power and make deliberate and concerted use of it to set in motion evils which leave no home in the world untouched. It is a cause of that magnitude that the United Nations will lay before your honors. In the prisoner's dock sit 20-odd broken men, reproached by the humiliation of those they have led almost as bitterly as by the desolation of those they have attacked. Their personal capacity for evil is forever past. It is hard now to perceive in these men as captives the power which, as Nazi leaders, they once dominated most of the world and terrified most of it. Merely as individuals, their fate is of little consequence to the world. What makes this inquest significant is that these prisoners represent sinister influences that will lurk in the world long after their bodies have returned to dust. We will show them to be the living symbols of racial hatreds, terrorism, and of violence, and of the arrogance and cruelty of power. We must never forget that the record on which we judge these defendants today is the record on which history will judge us tomorrow. We must summon such detachment and intellectual integrity to our task that this trial will commend itself to posterity as fulfilling humanity's aspirations to do justice. If these men are the first war leaders of a defeated nation to be prosecuted in the name of the law, they are also the first to be given a chance to plead for their lives in the name of the law. German people should know by now that the people of the United States hold them in no fear and in no hate. The German, no less than the non-German world, has accounts to settle with these defendants. These defendants were men of a station and a rank which does not soil its hands with blood. They were men who know how to use lesser folk as tools. We want to reach the planners and designers, the inciters and leaders, without whose evil architecture the world would not have been for so long scourged with the violence and lawlessness and racked with the agonies and convulsions of this terrible war. The persecution of all pacifist and dissenting sects, such as Jehovah's Witnesses and the Pentecostal Association, was particularly relentless and cruel. The policy toward the evangelical churches, however, was to use their influence for the Nazis' own purposes. I was about to take up the crimes committed against the Jews. The most savage and numerous crimes committed by the Nazis were those against the Jews. It is our purpose to show a plan and a design to which all Nazis were fanatically committed to annihilate all Jewish people. History does not record a crime ever perpetrated against so many victims. You will have difficulty, as I have, to look into the faces of these defendants and believe that in this 20th century, human beings could inflict such sufferings as will be proved here on their own countrymen as well as upon so-called inferior enemies. Of the 9,600,000 Jews who lived in Nazi-dominated Europe, 60% are authoritatively estimated to have perished. We charge that all of the atrocities against Jews were the manifestation and culmination of the Nazi plan to which every defendant in this box was a party. Determination to destroy the Jew was a binding force which at all times cemented the elements of this conspiracy. On many internal policies there were differences among the defendants, but there is not one of them who has not echoed the rallying cry of Nazism, Germany awake, Jews perish. The real complaining party at your bar is civilization. Civilization asks whether law is so laggard as to be utterly helpless to deal with crimes of this magnitude by criminals of this order of importance. It does not expect that you can make war impossible. It does expect that your juridical action will put the forces of international law, its precepts, its prohibitions, and most of all, its sanctions on the side of peace, so that men and women of goodwill in all countries may have leave to live by no man's leave underneath the law.